What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Pursuit of Growth. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for look right now. Everybody's time and attention span is at a premium, and rightfully so. So, thank you so much for taking time away from everything else that's going on to check out the video. Uh, Today, because of everything that's going on in broader society right now, and I thought long and hard about what my channel would look like, since it's so brand new, and there's so much stuff going on in the world right now with the COVID-19 and whatnot, that I was not sure how things would translate. But after a lot of thought and consideration, like I said, I think the best thing to do moving forward is that I want the Pursuit of Growth, the program and the content that we're going to be pushing out. I want that to be a reprieve and a refuge from all the all the tough things that we're facing as we move forward with the virus and all that stuff. So uh, basically, this is unfortunately just kind of another announcement. I do have some content after this little opening right here, but I want you to know that I'm a student, so I'm home for the next month at least. Um, Everything seems to be, I'm a big believer in doing what's asked of us and taking personal responsibility. So you will not find me outside of my property any more than I have to be. But the good thing about that is that I can work more on content because I don't even have to go to school anymore. I do have, we're transitioning to an online environment, like much of the school systems, K through 12 and collegiate level schooling is doing. So that's going to give me a lot of time at home. And like me, a lot of you will be at home. So we're going to start pumping out the content a little quicker. And with the blessing of this decent weather, we're going to start diving heavy into the In the Lawn series. I'm actually going to start shooting for that. Well, by the time you see this, I'll have already started shooting for it. And my goal is to I want to get content out, um, so that we can have a break from the inundation of bad news. And, at some points, we're probably going to have to discuss some heavier parts of this thing that we're all going through right now as a society. And this is just the beginning, I assure you. I was one of those, this is just the flu types up until mid last week. When that's when I started saying this is something more. But I don't want to get into that because we'll discuss anything we need to. I think as we get deeper and deeper into this, we're gonna get to a time where hopelessness might start to creep in. All the social distancing we're talking about right now, with and schools being shut up and people working from home, some of that stuff is for the next 2 weeks. I don't report back to my brick and mortar studies tentatively for over another month. And we will see, I believe, quite quickly if that's going to be extended. And I want to try to remain optimistic, but realistic at the same time. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But that all being said, I'm going to be able to focus on some more content related stuff. The In the Lawn series, I buttoned up some things I needed to button up with some folks in that regard before I start showcasing some of the stuff we're going to be using, uh, fertilizers, herbicides, soil tests. I had to do some reaching out before I went head deep into that. Like I said, we're all going to be hungry for something other than panic. And again, that's not to say we should not pay attention to it. Just be very cautious of where you're getting your stuff from. I personally can tell you that none of the information I'll be getting about the virus will be found on mainstream media. I'm limiting myself to only turning on the cable news channels for press conferences and the like from the president, the federal government, the Corona Task Force, Dr. Fauci, that dude. Anytime he's talking, you better listen. So the last thing I'll say is heed the advice of wiser folks. Um, be prayerful. This is a time where we can take necessary and rugged steps now to hopefully curb this thing as much as possible. And with that being said, we're going to get into the video today, which is a bit of a viral video that I think my public safety folks will maybe enjoy. So today, one of the things I wanted to look at, as I said, will be this is a place for some public safety related stuff. A lot of friends in the fire service and other public safety fields. And I watch the video we're about to watch. I've probably watched like 100 times this week, and it's a video from a training evolution. And I am not going to get into who is involved, who put on the training, what fire departments were there. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because the truth of the matter is it's not something that's specific, I don't believe, to this specific training organization, any of these specific fire companies. I think it's something that is throughout the fire service. So we're gonna watch this training video, and we'll discuss it.
He's sleeping in the third floor. He's gonna ask for his kid. My brother's house. He's right there. My brother's house is on fire. My brother's house is on fire. He's got a put it right there. He's got to hold on. Stay right there.
So that's the really relevant portion of what we need to watch, and a lot stuck out to me there. And I want to start off by saying if you think the first thing I'm going to mention, which it's the first thing I'm mentioning, is the chin strap stuff. And hey, while we're at it, and this is something I need to remember, we are on audio only. So if you are just listening to the program, what we're watching is they're simulating a victim presenting from a second or third, whatever story window, with smoke coming out of it, an extremely panicked victim that has a child. And what we just watched was the panicked father or whoever opens the door and screams, "Hey, help me, help me, I have a baby," as they're setting up their ground ladders, and then proceeds to huck the baby just down to the ground in the general vicinity of where these firefighters are operating to set up ladders to get to the victim and the baby. And we're gonna watch it again, and I'll pause it where the issues lie.
My brother's house is on fire. He's sleeping in the third floor. He's gonna ask for his kid. My brother's house. He's right there. My brother's house is on fire.
So obviously, what this is simulating is some stress-inducing characteristics while they're trying to set up some ladders to get to the victim that has just presented in the window. There's the typical person, civilian, saying, "Oh my goodness, my brother's house is on fire. Help, help, help." He's getting in their way. He's just trying to introduce some stress into the evolution, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But as we'll see here in a second, it gets kind of, we'll talk about what I have a problem with. Okay. So for those of you listening, the person screaming for help in this mock scenario decides that the best thing to do in that situation is to huck their baby. Look, if we're going to do stuff like this, it needs to be realistic. I've seen videos of people dropping their child from second story windows into the arms of firemen before. That is something that happens. Will Unless you've been there, you really never understand what the panicked mind of a human being is capable of. But that being said, the idea that somebody would ever like throw their child, like overhand throw a baby down, in this case almost three stories, to firemen that aren't even paying attention, is not very realistic. And that's what starts this whole thing off. But I want to rewind it just a wee bit, and I want you to watch at the bottom of the screen here the save, as it's being called, of this fake baby victim that was just thrown from a third story window. So what happens? The person throws it, and a fireman on the ground makes like, "I'll give it to him. It's an impressive catch." I mean, maybe people made the jokes in the comments that maybe he should try out for the NFL, but I got a real problem with this, and I'm going to tell you why. Let me pause it at the right spot here. So you can see the child is in the hands of that fireman, and I want you to look. As you'll see, there are more helmets on the ground in this video initially than anything else. But I'm not the chin strap police. If you're a professional fireman, wear your fucking PPE, and let that be the end of it. I'm not going to get into the chin strap police stuff because there's way more serious things in this video that we need to stay away from. So you'll see at the bottom of the video, you can see his head. He had I don't know, a Halligan bar, a Pro bar, some kind of bar in that regard, that he had in his hand, and he throws it down to make the catch of this baby. And watch, it's going to be quick. Watch what happens. Never mind that the helmet goes flying off. Never mind that he almost bashes his head into a ground ladder, which would have probably caused the fireman climbing up that ladder to fall when he gets knocked over. Never mind those things. I want you to realize how close that Pro bar, that Halligan bar, whatever you want to call it, came to this fireman's face. Now, as you'll notice in the video, the way he was carrying it and the way he dropped it, and thank God, I doubt this dude trains to carry his forks towards the way he's walking. But if that bar was flipped around, and the pike of that bar was what was leading the way, the chances of that going through his face and killing him instantly, if not permanently disfiguring him from the pike going into his damn eye. I mean, are we freaking serious here? Watch the reaction. And I want to say I get it's in the moment and stuff, but watch the reaction. There goes another helmet. So really, that's the part that's relevant. I encourage you to seek out and find that video and watch the whole thing for yourself. So the things I wanted to talk about with this video is I've seen, and it's based on a lot of the comments I've seen. People were saying initially, praising this type of thing because, well, that's something you might deal with in an actual fire. Somebody might actually throw their baby. No, somebody might drop their baby into your waiting arms. But the idea that any parent would ever overhand throw their child like it's some kind of sports ball is just nuts. That would never happen. I don't want to say never, but let's be real here. So that's unlikely scenario number one. And the thing you kept hearing in the or seeing in the comments section is you gotta this is aggressive firefighting. You gotta lay it out all out on the line. You gotta be willing to make the sacrifice. Bro, are you kidding me? That dude's face was so close to being impaled by that Halligan bar and then rolling into a ladder that a fireman was almost at the top of, which could have easily kicked the ladder out, dropping that fireman to the ground. And this is all in a training evolution. And people are going to be, oh, you got to train like you fight and all this stuff. That's bullshit. Because that evolution right there almost got one fireman killed and another one would have sustained a pretty decent fall. And the thing you'll hear is that you got to train hard. You got to train for the scenarios that you might face in the streets. That's craziness. I don't know what took place after. I wasn't involved in this. I don't know what took place after the fact, but I sure hope somebody was able to recognize what took place there and have a very serious after action review about it. Because in the moment, we saw everybody cheering, yay, woohoo, this was great. Look what almost could have came from that. I guarantee you those people wouldn't be cheering like that if that dude didn't get up. And then when somebody's like, hey, man, what's going on? Roll you over. The fucking ads or the pike or the forks or whatever is sticking out of his face while other people were tending to the fireman that was just knocked off a ladder from 2 stories up. And the thing that you'll run into is people saying you got to train for the situations you might handle. So my question is, at what point do we say, even though something might happen in the real world, we're not willing to take that kind of risk on a training facility or in a training evolution? And listen, I'm all for the aggressive firefighting thing. I believe that there has been a weakening of backbone in the fire service for quite some time. I believe in aggressive firefighting. I believe that firemen going into fires puts fires out and in turn saves lives, including firefighters' lives. Aggressive firefighting's the jam, man. But there's some things that we just do not incorporate into training because the risks are too great to take on in a training environment. And before you say I'm crazy, let me compare it to this. Because I'm a big Second Amendment guy. 8 years in the Army, done a lot of training evolutions with firearms. I love firearms. We're going to talk about them a good bit on this show. If you look at that video with the thinking, the mindset, and the logic that, well, you might encounter that in the real world, let me set up this scenario for you. Would any of you think that it's a good idea that when we're training in a firearms capacity to handle a mass shooting situation, that we should incorporate on our ranges live people running between our targets, because that's what would happen in the real world? Would anybody think that that's acceptable? Of course not. Because, and here's the thing, when you're involved in an active shooter situation, the evidence has shown that most people that aren't trained or have never dealt with a situation like that have a tense up moment where they don't know what to do. It's a sensory overload, and their mind is trying to explain away what's really happening with something more comfortable. Something that could explain away the trauma of what just took place and is taking place around them, to explain away what is really happening. You hear about this all the time. And in that moment is a freeze frame where you have you as the person that is trained to deal with a situation like this have about 3 to 5 seconds before people's panic starts coming in and people start fleeing all over the place. So that's when you want to be prepared for a situation. You don't panic, but you are prepared. that's when you handle your business. Because when the panic starts, you're still going to do what you need to do, but now your risk has increased exponentially because now you have panicked people fleeing all over the place around you. So, my question is, who would say that because that's what happens in active shooter situations, we should incorporate live people running around between us and the targets because that's what would happen in the real world? Nobody would agree to that. And look, I'm talking about the average Joe here. I'm not talking about, I know that there's circumstances where the most elite of the elite of the elite of the elite operators may incorporate some training of higher risk. But those gentlemen that I've had a privilege of rubbing elbows with in my time in service have more firearms ability and training in their pinky than we have in our entire houses. So we're not talking about them. There's, of course, externalities, but for the most part, nobody would say that it's an acceptable practice to put live people in between us and a target on a range to simulate what may happen in a real world situation. So if that's unacceptable, why is this acceptable? Because that might happen in real life. Yeah, it might. And all of us at that time will hopefully have trained not literally how to do something like that in the moment, but we'll have trained our minds to think so that we don't freeze if we see it. And here's another thing I want to point out. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to this video one more time here. And this is another thing that nobody's cognizant of, but it's reality. You want to talk about reality? What might happen? Oh, you got to train for this, bro. It's reality. That's what might happen. Okay, well, here's some reality for you. Let's watch right here. After the dude almost gets impaled in the face with a piece of metal and almost knocks a fireman off a ladder. You see the videos all the time if you're in the fire service of like what a fireman weighs in street clothes, and then as they put turnout gear on and SCBAs and a length of hose or some tools or a can, how greatly their weight increases. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that a 200-pound fireman becomes 300 pounds real quick, if not more. And I go 220, and I'm far from a big guy. I mean, when I was in the fire service, I was sickly skinny, but like by today's standards, I'm still not that big. I've seen a lot of big firemen. So let's say in the real world you make that catch and you're a 200-pound guy. By the time, if you saw the video, the dude catches the baby and rolls on top of it. You don't think a 250, 300-pound fireman falling on a child like that you think that's going to result in good things happening? It's not. I applaud the effort, but the most likely, if you want to be honest and realistic here, the most likely thing is that if you caught an infant like that, you would probably have crushed it to death. And again, this isn't to criticize this organization, this fire company, this specific firefighter. I just hope that in the heat of the moment when everybody was excited, and I mean, dude, look here. Look at the reaction. You're up in the corner there. Everybody, oh yeah, like he just won the Super Bowl. I brought this up because there's this pendulum swing in the fire service where first it was all about balls out, aggressive firefighting, no questions asked, and then the safety sallies come in. So this is kind of like a rebuttal to it's not a rebuttal, but it's kind of like the other side of my argument. The safety sallies come in and they church everything up. We're getting all this great information in the fire service about how we can mitigate risk and all those things. And that's a good thing. Mark, that I said that. It's a good thing. But just like anything else, there's a pendulum swing. And we swung, and I think it reached max capacity a couple years ago on the one end, and now it's starting to come back down the other way. So if over here is just crazy risk, balls out firefighting, taking no precautions at all, not wearing face masks inside of structures that were on fire, not wearing seatbelts, just all the stuff that we weren't thinking about is here. And now you have the other side of the pendulum, which is here, and it's dry erase board command. It's everything is pre-planned to a point. Pre-planning is good to a point where we think a whiteboard is going to put fires out. That's the other extreme. And the pendulum swung, and it was all the way here. I mean, ask any fireman worth his salt around the country, and they'll tell you that they've been screaming for a renaissance in the fires, a renaissance in a lot of ways. We don't have time to get into all that today. But one of the ways is that we need to get away from this overly risk aversion fire service and understand that we're here for the public. And when I say we, let me be really clear. I'm not affiliated with the fire service anymore. It's just the way I talk. But we're coming back off of that crazy safety thing, and we're finding like a nice I mean, guys weren't doing searches. Guys weren't doing the aggressive things they need to do out of self-preservation. But at some point, you got to realize what you signed up for. And if you're not willing to take reasonable risks because you're the most important person on that fire ground, you need to reevaluate if it's the job for you. But that doesn't mean you take undue and unnecessary risks, especially on the training ground. I just hope that we're going to close out here, but I just really hope that somebody is saying, hey, things happen. Look, I mean, it's the training environment, but we got to be smarter about how we train. And I think that the example I gave of active shooter situations is a good way to illustrate how just because you in the fire service might face a certain scenario in the real world, some things are just not worth the risk in training. And that's really what I really wanted to illustrate in that video. If you're in the fire service, let me know what you think. Am I wrong? I don't know. I mean, I'm not even in the fire service anymore, so maybe things have changed. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe you agree. Let me know. Comment wherever you're maybe listening to this. And I think that's going to do it for the day. Thank you guys so much for coming along for the ride. Like I said, the first of the In the Lawn series is going to be starting up soon. I'm really excited about that. Spring's here! I'm not saying spring's a coming anymore. I'm saying spring's here. So I might start putting out more content. We're all going to be stuck in our houses. We're going to be limiting contact. I recommend that you do. As far as the COVID-19 thing, stay informed, stay prepared, but not panic. And we'll get through this just fine. Say your prayers. A prayerful society is always what's best. And we'll see you maybe at the end of the week. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, this is The Pursuit of Growth.